sales is always compared to high performance sport. How much time do these guys spend practicing rather than on the field or on the track or in the pool? 90% of the time they're practicing for 10% in the game. It's completely the opposite in selling. We do 90%, we just get on there or wing it. We don't practice. That creates a whole bunch of problems. You're better off putting your money on the roulette wheel than the forecast accuracy of some people's pipelines. The point I'm trying to make is you can have the best enablement technology. If you do not invest in good quality leadership, it is worthless. I am seeing so much money being wasted in AI. It's not been embedded and it's not been led.
Welcome to the CEO and the Salesman podcast, where we talk to leaders in technology and also leaders in other areas to find out what it really takes in the trenches, what it takes to really be successful in 2026 and beyond. So today I'm joined by two people that live and breathe the subject that I have near and dear to my heart, and that's sales enablement, and sales capability. So I'm really excited to sort of cut through the general stuff and get right to the nub of the issue. So Matt Webb is the CEO of the Mentor Group, and James Barton is the Chief Solutions Officer. They've spent years working in sales and marketing, or sales in particular, from working at Vodafone and being IT directors of a football club. These guys have got a broad breadth of experience when it comes to selling in today's modern world. They've just opened an office here in the US. And I'm excited to hear about how that goes. So welcome, gentlemen.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you. Nice to be here, Matthew.
Fantastic. Look, guys, I want to jump straight in. This is for you, Matt, because this is the CEO of the Salesman podcast. So I'm going to go straight to Matt. So from a CEO's perspective, when a sales organization underperforms, how is it usually a capability issue, an understanding issue? Is it a leadership issue? Where do you see in most of the situations when you talk to clients, where is the actual issue when it comes to growth?
So what a great question to start with. And I think, I try not to use it too much in this podcast, but I'll say it depends. Because often organizations do spend a load of their budget going straight to capability and go, right, well, it must be our people. There must be something that they're not doing, or their skills are not there, or whatever. And of course that can be true, but not always. So we talk about technology, process, and people. In those three areas, that it's often a combination of one, two, or sometimes three that's causing the problems in their pipeline, in their performance overall. But it's rarely just people alone, because I sort of passionately believe that nobody comes to work to do a bad job. You don't self-sabotage yourself. And so there must be other things going on, right? It could be that I'm not being coached by my manager, which is capability, or I'm not using the CRM to really look at my book of business. So it's a number of things. And I think if I could sort of hone it down to a couple that we're finding at the moment, pipeline's a big problem in sales, like 2026. Many clients that we talk to will say either we haven't got enough pipeline, or the pipeline that we have got is poor quality, or deals are not moving. So that's a problem. But it's not always the capability. It could be that you got the wrong go-to-market strategy, or you're just not focusing on the right things. So the will might be there, and the skill might be there, but actually you're talking to the wrong people at the wrong time about the wrong things. So I'd love to say it's one thing, Matthew, but it's not. It rarely is. So when you look across technology, people, and process, and really lift up the bonnet or the hood, that's the bonnet.
The hood. No, we can say
yeah. The hood, yeah. Then you'll find that there's things going on. And in our business, we like to think of what we do as going in and doing that MOT. And you'll see those warning lights coming on in different areas. And you can turn one up, a bit like whack-a-mole. But then you turn that one up and the other one's still going. You have to look at everything across those three areas.
Got it. Very cool. So James, same question to you. Where do you see are you seeing anything in particular that is just standing out for you in the last couple of dozen engagements you guys have had?
Yeah, Matt's nailed it in as much as the presenting problem for nearly all of our clients is pipeline. And the fact that the pipeline is basically lies. We've got a statistic that says you're better off putting your money on the roulette wheel than the forecast accuracy of some people's pipelines. And it comes down to discipline. And the other bit there where my man is spot on is why that's a problem depends on the situation. Sometimes it's 100% a leadership issue, because what they're not doing is they're not being deliberate and focused on making sure that the pipeline is well qualified. Absolutely the case. Sometimes it is pure skill. Salespeople just aren't very good, and so it very much depends on where you're at. But you've got to have that discipline, and you've got to come at a pipeline with suspicion. And that sounds really weird, because it's what we can't do is we can't think of the buyer as the problem. That is the wrong lens. We've got to come out and say there's something wrong with what we're doing, because sales done right should be adding value to both sides, and it should be seamless and without friction.
Love that. So I think an American president at one stage said, "Trust but verify." And so, the pipeline investigation, the conversation I've often, when I'm speaking to salespeople, asking about their pipeline, it's like trying to get a conversation out of my 15-year-old after I pick him up from school. So how was school? Good. Anything interesting? No. Cool. So, you follow up on a sales conversation, and a week later after, and then you get that back, you go, how was the sales conversation? Good. What's the meeting next week?
But then, Matthew, you then fall into another problem, which is how you're motivating the sales team to give you accurate information. Because if you're overly indexing on it, and you're, I would say overcoaching, but you're on their back all the time, guess what? They're not going to put the data in. They're just not going to do it, because no one wants to get hassled, and you get sandbagging and all sorts of behavior. So one of the things that Matt and I often talk about is be careful what you wish for, because you can end up with another set of problems by being too disciplined. And there's a real fine line. This is where Matt's real skill is finding that balance between being the dictator and the coach.
Got it. So really here that I've got that balance, by the way, between the two. I'm quite reassured.
It's right. This call's not recording, Matt, so we're good to go.
And also, I'll just give you some reassurance, Matthew, that my 22, 24, and 26-year-old react in a very similar way when they came home from work. So, did you have a good day? Yeah. Literally, the things like. Can I just want to add one thing to what James has said there, and it's a bit of a provocation actually. In the sometimes in pipeline management we have a vanity metrics of 3x or 4x coverage, and I say it's a vanity metrics because if you look at it in purely quantitative terms, anybody can fill that pipeline to look like they've got coverage. But if you have a blend of qualitative and quantitative, i.e. you've got 3x, 4x coverage, and it's really good, then brilliant. I would rather have 2x really good rather than 4x or just fill the pipeline for the sake of filling it. And that's where, that inspection that James was talking about, that fine balance really comes to the fore.
Yeah, and we talk about clean, healthy, sufficient for that reason. Your pipeline needs to be clean, it needs to be healthy, and it needs to be sufficient, but just working on one of those metrics is not good enough. As you say, the vanity stuff is just a fool's errand, fool's game.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. Great in specificity. I really like that, gentlemen. So thank you for that. So this sort of switching gears over to America. So you've recently opened up here in North America. As the audience knows, I am Australian, but I recently moved here to the America. And so I want to ask, what assumptions about selling have you found not to be true in America? Or what assumptions have you made about American selling that are more to do with European bias rather than American bias?
Well, first of all, with an English accent, it only gets you so far. So, and selling into America, which is something we're not new to it, by the way, Matthew. We've got clients in America we have had for certainly all of the 19 years that I've been in Mentor Group. So we're not new to it. What I think is really important about what we're doing now is we've actually got our people selling who are in America. So I tried, and I've got a fair degree of humility that says I got some deals really well developed in a new business sense. Talking new logo here for a moment, and then you always get to the altar, and then what we found is that this other company is just down the road from us. So we certainly have learned from that in the past, knowing that to have a true US and North American presence, and we're doing the same in LATAM, to have people in the area is really, really important to show that You're not dealing with someone that's 4.5, in some cases 6,000 miles away. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we never assume. So because we trained thousands of US sellers over the years, we know that the market is very similar in the way that customers are being engaged. Not the same, but it's similar. So therefore, when we, and through James and his team, build our marketing campaign and our go-to-market strategy, we have to just tweak it for a US market versus a European and Asia Pacific market. That's what we found so far.
Very cool. From my side, if you were to ask me that question, Matthew, which I know you're about to, right, is altered down to compliance. So where we're used to selling some of our, for example, our AI scenario technology, where we might get stuck with works councils and bits and pieces, those things just don't exist and or aren't so concerned in America, which means that sometimes sales can happen much quicker with much less friction. So there is that's the flip side to what Matt's saying. We also find, generally speaking, that deals tend to be larger in the US than they will be over here in Europe.
Yeah, which is not.
Is the market? Yeah, the market is. That's why I moved here as well. The market is just significantly bigger, and in my perspective, just people seem to be a little bit more positive about their own ability and a little bit more positive about what's possible.
They're willing to try. They're willing to
Try you're making there. Actually, could we talk about volume, value, and velocity? And one thing that we do certainly see is with some of our big global US customers, the velocity is far quicker.
Yeah.
So want to move into right, go. Let's get on with this and get underway with that. And again, there's no reason for that. It's neither good nor bad. It's just slightly different.
Yeah. And I've not seen anybody work. I mean, and I've worked in the UK, as I certainly work in Australia. The hustle culture over here is real. There is you don't switch off. You're on 24/7. I got friends of mine working in corporate, 16 hours a day, 6 days a week is absolutely the norm. And that level of work, I'm okay being at my own business, and I've only ever worked for myself since I was 22. And before that, I was a commission-only salesperson, so you can basically call that your own business anyway. Yeah. But I've never seen anybody, rarely see people in the corporate machine work as hard as what I've seen over here.
And it's just, what other differences have you seen there, Matthew? If I flip the question back to you, as you've worked in those, what the other, if you could say the top two differences that you found, what would they be?
So I work in B2B SaaS. So in Australia, a lot of people have to bootstrap it. They've got to figure it out, or they get pushed to go to America. So capital allocation and capital availability is much greater over here. Their enthusiasm for taking risks is much higher, and also the fact that those both things sit in that positivity and speed narrative that you and I were just speaking about. So they take you at face value. They expect you to respond, and also they want to see that return on investment very. And they're happy to take big swings. I was talking to a person the other day who's building a piece of software that is mapping the brain like they have within AI, and they're currently mapping a fly's brain. And I said, "How are you funded?" I said, we got Series A. We got a couple of $1 million on that. One guy's out of Yale, one guy's out of Princeton. We're talking about super deep tech. That stuff would be very rare to find just in a casual conversation over a whiskey last night. You wouldn't see that on the Gold Coast. I certainly see that in Sydney very often. I don't know the environment in the UK, honestly, as well as I do Australia. But meeting multiple people who are doing deep tech with no revenue is unusual for me.
Yeah.
See, but seems like a big risk on the fly.
That's right. If that fly starts getting cold of clawbot, we've got trouble. So gentlemen, we got a lot of my clients are in SaaS. A lot of people who are listening to this in SaaS. So there's constant pressure to grow growth quarterly. So we need that quarterly growth. We got that quarterly metric to hit. So how does a CEO balance short-term revenue targets and building sales culture that protects long-term ARR and client retention?
So I'll give you two examples of how I think that SaaS companies, but every company should be focusing on this. The first is never focus on just a quarter. So when we look at pipeline discipline, we always split out the current quarter versus a future quarter, because if you try to combine the two of those together in one coaching session, there is only ever one winner, Matthew, and it is not the pipeline one, i.e. by definition, the one that's further out. So if you build a discipline within your sales leadership team to split near-term and long-term now, you get a much more sustainable pipeline over time. It's really very important that you do that, because otherwise you only ever stick in this 90-day rolling culture. So that's number one. Number two is sales is not a sequence of isolated events. It isn't. So quite often when we're looking for ARR, particularly on the renewals front, we've got a marketing team, we've got a sales team, we've got a customer success or renewals team, and often they don't talk to each other enough. And they forget that a constant in all of that infinite loop is the customer. So, and the customer, by the way, doesn't mind whether they're talking to marketing, sales, or customer success. What they want is a service which is going to deliver them measurable return and ROI, as you mentioned earlier on. So what I think we've got to get better at as an industry overall in the end-to-end customer engagement cycle is how well are we communicating? How well are we qualifying? How well are we passing on that information so that if it goes from one function to the other, the customer never knows. So the experience is always optimized. The customer experience is fantastic. And when it comes to renewal, it just happens because value has been realized, because the value qualification has been shared, and then that's been followed through for adoption.
Yeah.
So those two things, split out near-term and long-term. If you don't, you're only ever going to focus on near-term. And then secondly, treat the customer for the full life cycle, not in a series of interventions, because if you do that, things are going to fall between the gaps and the customer experience will be impacted.
Very cool. Like that.
And I would add to that, Matthew, not blowing smoke up your backside, but I was on your podcast yesterday, or your webinar yesterday, and you were talking about the new wave versus old wave selling. And what you were positioning was very solid, which is we need to be adding value at every stage. And what Matt's talking about there is exactly that, whether you're in marketing, because we know now that marketing is doing a lot of what sales used to do. So we need to make sure that's in place, and the same with customer success. But we need to have a look at this, a bit more of a practical step, look at how those stages are rewarded. Because what tends to happen is there is an imbalance of rewards, financial reward for the person that sells it, and it becomes less effective for the marketeer who's affecting that sale and the people in customer success who are then doing the renewals. And they don't always add up. So there needs to be a bigger understanding of how all of that compensation structure works. Because what got us here is not going to get us there in the future, because sales has changed.
It absolutely has, and that's right. In my webinar yesterday, I spoke at length about the evolution of sales and how that works. So Jim, I wanted to James in particular. I know you mentioned earlier you're building the next stage or the next phase of digital learning. I want to understand that a little bit more. And so, where SaaS companies? I'm trying to talk SaaS. Obviously, you can broaden that out to every business. So where are companies confusing content consumption with skill acquisition, and how are you solving for that?
Okay. So one of my taglines is enablement doesn't have a content problem. It has an execution problem. We are flushed with content. Every organization is full of content. I mean, I can go and use AI to go and create any course that I want. So why would anybody in their right mind come to Matt and I and say, I'm going to give you some dollar and you're going to train my people? It cannot be around content, but content still matters. Okay. So there's what we've got to look for. And then if you then turn the table, then you start looking at the concept of skills-led job roles. Now, what I mean by that is if you strip away the job titles and you look at an account manager, a key account manager, a BDR, an SDR, and you start picking apart what skills they need, like Lego blocks, you would end up without a culture of hierarchy, without a culture of job roles, but people that can do the right skills at the right job. So you've got to match the people to the right skills. Then, clearly, how do you measure for that? Because each of those little blocks, I can provide you some content for, but how do I know that has been retained? And that's where we talk about practice. Practice. It's such a fundamental thing that we should do that doesn't happen. If you go to any sport, any high-performing sport, and sales is always compared to high-performance sport, how much time do these guys spend practicing rather than on the field or on the track or in the pool? It's 90% of the time they're practicing for 10% in the game. It is completely the opposite in selling. We do 90%. We'll just get on there, we'll wing it. We don't practice. Now that creates a whole bunch of problems. We don't have the muscle memory to be able to respond when our customers need us just on an add value. But also from a psychological point of view, we don't provide safe spaces for salespeople to screw up. And that sounds like a strange thing to say, but actually, you think about most salespeople, and I know I'm going to be kind of stereotypical. Big personalities, lots of ego, they do not like to be shown up to fail. And so we need to create these safe places where we can help and then coach them through to be able to say, yeah, you can do the job. Or actually, there's some things that we can help you with. And that's where things like AI coaching, scenario generation, virtual reality, all of the things that we're doing. I mean, we've got a program that we do with virtual reality. And what that course is designed to do is to put sellers into really uncomfortable positions so that when they actually go and meet an angry customer, they know what to do. Because the role plays that we normally do are so flaccid and benign that they're not useful, right? But if we can go at it and we can actually say to somebody, here is an angry customer that's going to make you up. We've actually had people come out of the VR sessions crying because it's so intense, right? That sounds a bit weird, but it's not as bad as all that. But it gets them to realize actually it's not easy. And you're going to meet difficult people. How do you deal with it? So your question about I can provide content that comes out my ears. I can do it, e-learning. I can do it by ILTs, VRTs, whatever. It's interesting, but it's not what's going to move the needle. What will move the needle is execution and practice.
Love it. I couldn't agree more. I just want to go, testify. So that's it. That's the razor root. So I absolutely love that. There's so much, we talk about sales teams and team spirit with all this sort of stuff. And then there's absolutely no time in training. One of my children is in rowing. The other one is a basketballer. Rowing, it's 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, and they do one regatta a week.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of practice, a lot of technique. And then I was saying it maybe on the webinar yesterday, is that it's not just about having a script, because I can read Macbeth, but Broadway is not calling. So it's about so sales is a performance, and it needs to come from a place of such deep understanding that it now looks like they're your words, not somebody's script. So I've said to salespeople, if you hate scripts and they sound wooden, it's not the script's problem; it's that you suck at it. Yeah. So you got to get better at it. And maybe I'm a little bit coarse that you wouldn't use those words. This is why I'm not a great coach. So quick aside, it became very evident that I was not a good coach because I was in my sales room. I owned the company, so I thought I knew everything. I was sub 30. I had the desk in the corner, even though I had a sales manager, because that's my happy place selling. And so I was sort of walking through the room, heard a salesperson pitching, and it was so far off the script. It was so terrible. I just walked over and hung the phone up mid-sentence. And I said, that was shit. Go back to the script, read it, call them back and apologize for being disconnected, don't know what happened, and fix your stuff or you're out of here. So terrible coaching, terrible mentorship. That room was a room full of very, very successful salespeople. Definitely not because of my ability to lead. Maybe the only reason that they succeeded because they had got to hear me selling all day, every day. Maybe that's it.
Well, there's another interesting conversation. Maybe we'll get onto it, which is one of my soapboxes, which is the difference between coaching and mentoring. But if we go back to this thing about practice, we have an acronym which is LPE: learn, practice, and embed. And the embed part is the secret sauce because, again, learn's easy. Practice, there's tools all over the place. But you've got to embed it into the cadence and lifestyle that people can just get it on a daily basis. And this goes right back to what we said right at the beginning, which is around discipline, making sure that the skills, the behaviors, the cadences are part of the day-to-day work. It cannot be ad hoc. It's too important to be ad hoc. Matt and I are so passionate about trying to raise the status of sellers because we are a profession. We're not a bunch of fly-by-nights, right? We are people that are doing something that genuinely makes the world go round. Economies move because of who we are. And we need to be very, very proud of what that is, which means, just like a professional seller, we should have the pride to be able to go and practice our skills time and time again. And I've spoken way too much. I'm going to go be quiet for a bit.
I think to add to that, one of the sort of underlying threads in this conversation is, remember I said earlier, nobody comes to work to fail. And your person on the phone, when they were doing their pitch, they weren't trying to do it badly. They just didn't know any different. So whether you meant to do it or not, it would have been an inflection point for them that said, okay, so maybe I need to improve here. And maybe you didn't do it in the right way. You didn't do it in the right way. But actually the impact of that will be, I need to change. And we are creatures of habit. All three of us on this, everybody who's listening, we are creatures of habit. If you just get out of bed in the morning and you look at your routine, the chances are the first 5 to 10 things you do are going to be exactly the same every day because we're hardwired. What we've got to do as enablers is to tap more into the conscious thinking to try and change the unconscious thinking. Because if we don't, we will often run on autopilot. And if you can improve by 1%, even if you do 1% a week, by the end of the year, you're 50% better than you were at the start. Now, I know that's just numbers, and that you could get you're making that up, but the principle of it is right. That we are not finished, we are not stuck, we are not who we are. We can do things differently. We can evolve. We can find marginal gains. And if we all live with that sense of wonder and curiosity over how we could improve, the world looks different. And I'll just finish off with this, because often in our training programs, we'll get someone in the back of the room. They'll go, "Yeah, I've been here. I've done this for 30 years. I'm not really sure why I'm here today." Now, I don't say this, Matthew, out loud, but I think it in my head. I'll say, well, if you've done 30 years, or if you've done 1 year repeated 30 times.
Yep.
If you've not changed and you're the same as you were, and I guess it will relate to your webinar yesterday, you're probably out of date and obsolete in the world of modern selling now. Yeah. So, embrace a growth mindset. Think about and be curious about how you could improve for the benefit of the customer, for the benefit of professionalizing our industry of selling. Everything changes. It really does. It's just open your mind up.
I actually had on my sales board is AVC, but it was always be curious, because questions are the answer. And I had because I'm very old, in my sales training manuals, I literally had printed pages in a lever arch file, and it was the questions are the answer folder. And it was we actually would train and go around questions that we were going to ask today, and questions that were going to drive the sales forward. And so that was absolutely. And of course, the great American philosopher said to Rupert, don't be judgmental, be curious.
Sure.
Yeah, that's right. So,
is everything. Anyway, you're right on Sid, by the way, because it was Glengarry Glen lost, wouldn't it? Always be closing. But and then I think it moved to ABQ, always be qualifying. Now in modern selling, I think it's ABV, nothing to do with alcohol. Always be validating. So in what we do, because we're validating, because we must go in with an opinion, rather than going in and saying, "Oh, what's keeping you awake at night?" Lazy. Can't do that anymore. You've got to go in with opinions on that and then validate.
Love it. And there's so many, and there's so much we can do with salespeople to help them understand, because really that we are the pointy end of the spear when it comes to the organization. Of course, marketing is taken a lot more front seat, as I said in my webinar yesterday. People just used to phone us from an advert in a newspaper, which feels like the golden age of selling. And then people would answer the phone and people would call us back. It's just crazy. But so it's never been more. But I guess the punchline of my whole story about selling has changed. It's never been more important for salespeople to be at the top of their game at all times, whenever they're speaking to clients, which goes to our conversation about practice versus execution, is because if they get that wrong, you've got really one go at this. If you don't get that conversation right, if you haven't embedded, like James was saying, you haven't embedded and deeply understood the reason why, the raison d'etre, the exact how we're going to go about this, then the person going to hear that and they're not going to return the next call. They're not going to return the email. It's easy to not engage with salespeople anymore. So when a person takes the effort, makes the effort to engage with you as a company who has salespeople, who is selling, there's nothing more important than that conversation at that time.
Yeah, and that's fascinating because you talk about you've got the golden age of selling from the newspaper advert, but that's exactly where a lot of the sales methodologies were created, and we're now trying to apply that to modern selling, and we're wondering why they don't work, and that's why another one of our catchphrases. We see a lot of catchphrases, Matt. Is sales is dead, long live selling, because it's no longer about a sale. It's a process. It's back to that infinite loop concept we were talking about earlier. We have to be good at the whole process, not just one bit anymore.
Sorry, mate, go on.
I'm just going back to what you said, Matthew, a moment ago. I remember, probably it must have been about 10, 15 years ago. I know I'm older than I look, right? That's what you're thinking. I was sat in a car park in a pharmaceutical company that we got a lead for. And when you get sometimes you get that, oh dear moment. I'm sitting there going, I have not done my research. So I'm not going in with any kind of opinion here. And the heart raced and I felt really exposed going into a meeting. Now we're talking 10, 15 years ago. And at that point, I probably got away with it. And I say got away with it because you should never have been in that position. Never done it again since, just to be clear. You can't do that now. No, you just can't. You've got to go in. You've got to do your research. You've got to do your homework. You've got to create an opinion relative to the individual that you're speaking to. And of course, all the relationship stuff is still important. You've got to have a very good professional bar, build rapport. All that stuff is always going to be there. But to go in and go, right, tell me, what are your top 3 challenges? No. These we see in organizations similar to yours, in roles similar to yours, these are the 3 things that we're often seeing that people are focusing on. Let me validate that. How is that for you right now? It's just changed, and it's changed for the better because it means people, going back to what you were saying, James, we've got to be more professional. We've got to be more recent. We've got to be more thoughtful in what we do so that we can bring a value conversation in early. Because without that, you don't get that face time again, Matthew, as you were just talking about that. Because they go, right, lovely meeting, really liked you, all the best, I need you, all the best. Don't call me, I'll call you, right? We've heard that before. But, oh no, don't say that. So yeah, that's just a bit of an add-on to that.
Yeah, I love it. So, gents, boards always want predictability. We spoke about pipeline coverage. We talked about that 3 times and how you can see and bag that stuff. What do you think is the biggest lever that improves forecast accuracy? That the businesses and people listening to right now, they can go, I'm going to go and execute on this thing so I can actually tell the truth, or I know when my people are not telling you the truth.
So qualify. I sound like a politician now, don't I? So
You haven't got the hand motion. You've got to do the hands.
qualify. Actually, is this one these days? We have the best qualification. No, I won't do it. I don't. So, should call it good salespeople qualify the best salespeople qualifier. So, that's what I was mentioning earlier, by the way, about the vanity metrics of 3x, 4x. If I've got 2x and it's really, really well qualified against a band, a medic, sports, and there's many of them out there that we all know of. But as a leader, I'm sitting down and saying, right, tell me what the identifying implication of pain is, and they can give me a good answer. Who are you talking to? How are they going to measure? So I'm not going to go through each of the elements. If they do that really well, and by the way, the organization makes it okay for them not to have an answer, so they can go and do the appropriate actions and activities to close the gap, which is what coaching is, gap analysis. Happy days. If you don't have that, and you're asking those questions and they've got no clue, and they've got no action and activity, then your forecast accuracy is going to go through the floor. So qualify in and out, and then qualify well, in the eyes of the customer so that you get velocity in the opportunity.
Yeah, and I 100% agree that. Although I would add qualify to what you just said, Matt. But we got to. But the important thing is to make sure that we also change the culture. That qualifying out is okay and actually should be rewarded, because often that is not the case. And as leaders, we looking for people to qualify in, not appreciating the qualifying out has so much power behind it. So we've got to change the culture.
So you can go to the board and go, look at the size of our pipeline. The board goes, great job. And then in the next board meeting, they're saying, but you didn't hit your number.
Yeah.
They're going, yeah, but that's because the customer moved the decision. Right. But you should know that.
Yeah.
You really should know that. So it's so important in forecast accuracy, which is your question. Actually, make sure we qualify well, and that's going to help.
And I suppose you could extend that out to say then that in any organization, get a qualification framework in place, even if it's as simple as BANT. You don't have to go all the way to MidPick. Have a qualification metric. Make sure everybody understands it. Train everybody on how to use it, and then be consistent with it. Because that's then going to work. Otherwise, if you just go in piecemeal or you're moving between different types of qualification methods, forget it.
Yeah, fantastic. So, a quick story. So, I was lucky enough to learn that qualification out before I even started my first business. So, what I found is I was a salesperson, 19 in the boiler room situations, and we had lever arch files of paper because I was selling, obviously chalkboards. So we were selling technology, but we had no technology on our desks. It was amazing. The most technology was a telephone. You could push buttons rather than actually have the rotary. So it was in 97. And so what I noticed is the people with the thickest backbooks, so we call it the backbook, right? It was the lever arch file. The thickest backbooks, they made the most number of calls. They had the highest volume of talk time, weren't as successful as me. And I had the thinnest backbook because when somebody said no, I believed them. Or when I qualified them out, I took this weird pleasure is tearing the lead out and crumpling it and throwing it in the corner. At the end of the day, I smoothed it out, gave it to the secretary to enter it into the database. But it was a weird emotional release because then I could focus on the best people. Exactly. So you have longer conversation with. I didn't have 100 calls to do. I remember this lady that I'm working in the next room. Literally of a day to a page diary, she would have 2 columns of callbacks for the day. I had 5 callbacks that day at specific times, and those calls went for half an hour to an hour. And and I was always the top of the sales board. She's always making the most calls, and nobody could figure it out. So, qualification, any of the frameworks, as long as there is a framework, so BANT or MAIN, any of them are ones we should be looking at, just so we can make sure that people are looking at those things and being clear. And what I also noticed is in that qualify piece is I used to have a little small cassette dictaphone, and for new salespeople, earlier salespeople, and I heard somebody drifting, I just go up and click my recorder on and put it down next to them. And just by the fact they knew they were being recorded, it clicked straight back on script and their sales were up. Yeah. Just by the act of recording, we know that they're going to be better at their job. And so...
Also highlighting there, by the way, Matthew, is what I said earlier about quantitative metrics. Because that lever arch file that had all those callbacks in, they were going, right, if I do 100 calls a day, I'm going to hit my lagging indicator, which is performance. Not necessarily enough, because 99 of them might be completely useless. So actually, qualify them early and go, right, I've now got 30 that are really likely to buy. So I'm going to spend more time with them, qualify better, create more value, and my close ratios improve enormously. So that's why we've got to have the blend of qualitative and quantitative, and not just quantitative.
I'm glad you said it, Matt, because I can never pronounce those two.
You want one?
No, quantitative and quality. I can't say. Look, it's
sorry, I couldn't help myself. So, gentlemen, just thinking about your last couple of transformation projects, what did you see was the most common decision that ended up costing the company the most revenue? Or can you think about that? and before you came along, if that is more appropriate to talk about.
No, it's fine. And I'll be more generic around why a lot of transformation programs do fail rather than specific, organizations. And the biggest one is a lack of alignment top down.
100%.
So if we, and I was talking earlier about our sales management system, where you have a, forecast and a pipeline, you have a cadence of the right kind of meetings. If you don't have alignment of any kind of change initiative from the most senior people in the organization through to, in our case, sellers, then sellers are going to do what the person above them asks them to do, and so on all the way up the chain. So unless they're aligned and they're all flying in formation, the change is not going to stick, because it will just change. I'd liken it to, and I use the word soccer for your podcast. I'd liken it to when young children are playing soccer, and they kick the ball and it goes over to the left, and they all go that way, and then it goes over to the right, and then they all go that way. If you've not got senior leaders aligned to a common goal, unintended, then people are just going to follow wherever they're going, and change doesn't stick. So I see that a little bit too often, actually, where you haven't got everybody at every level flying in formation towards a common goal or North Star to help them change for the long term.
Yeah, and I see exactly the same, Matt. You get a rogue leader in a program like that, and that you'll take the whole thing off track. So you've got to make sure that alignment is absolutely pure up and down. I think the other thing that I would say, Matthew, is where transformation has failed is where companies have just focused on the delivery of content, and they haven't then thought. Remember that learn, practice, embed concept? They focus on the learn. We're just going to put people on courses. We're just going to put people on courses, and then there's nothing there to embed it. And there's no follow up. There's nothing more that we're doing to make this part of the day-to-day culture. That's when it will start to fall apart real quick.
Love it. So, gentlemen, I'd like to get your big, as we wrap up here, I just want to get your opinion. It might be separate, might be aligned. So if a company came to you, let's say they're a $10 million a year business, they can only invest in one lever in the course of the next 12 months. Is it sales leadership or better enablement technology?
Oh, there you go. This is this is I know what you're doing here, by the way. You're deliberately playing James and I against each other. So nice work on that. If I'm asked, I would always say the same thing. If you can create a coaching culture within your organization that really helps people improve, helps people qualify properly, helps make sure that you've got great focus on the customer, and that is going to give you a bang for your buck. Now, the caveat will be that in the absence of technology, it may slow it down a little bit. So I do think you need a both. But if you really push me, I'd say if you can get leaders to be great coaches with a great cadence and a great qualification, you are likely to see a significant uptick in performance.
Thank you, Matt. James?
If you put my wife in a Bugatti, it's worthless because she'll crash it, right? And so if you look at what you say, if I had the best,
Shout out to James's wife.
hey, so if we used to call her car the crisp packet because it was crumpled at every corner. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point I'm trying to make is you can have the best enablement technology. If you do not invest in good quality leadership, it is worthless. I am seeing so much money being wasted in AI because it actually hasn't been thought through, it's not been embedded, and it's not been led. Please, whoever's listening to this, do not do that. Invest first in the leadership, then in the AI, in that order. Now, I'm a technologist, and I would always say technology. But unless you've got the framework and the foundations and the scaffolding to support it, you are wasting your money.
I love that answer. Of course, it will also based on my biases, but also what I believe.
Then up you with that I was right. And that's all that.
That's what I heard. We'll clip that. We'll clip that. First of all, James talking about his wife crashing cars, and then, of course, Matt being right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the episode about it. So, Sebi, before we wrap up, it's gone off the rails. A couple of 3 salespeople talking. So, Before we wrap up, I just want, if anybody's listening and wants to have a deeper conversation about sales transformation, enablement, the process, the technologies, and your movement to North America, what's the best way to connect with you guys, and what should they do first?
Yeah, I mean, first things first, go to our website. You can click on the contact us. It feels a little bit forensic, but fill a form out and come to us. Follow Steve Promisel, who's our head of North America, and reach out Steve via LinkedIn. He can get in touch. You're very, very welcome to reach out to me directly as well on LinkedIn, and I'll engage our US team to support you. And the other thing I'd say is, change is difficult. So, and timing of change is everything. So if you're looking to do something within your business, we can really help you have a clear definition of why now, and then we can see if we're a good fit to help you or not. And I say to you or not quite deliberately, because one thing we're particularly proud about in Mentor is if we're not the right fit, we tell people. We don't try and create something that is not in our sweet spot. That's not our business.
That's what we preach. We qualify out, right?
But we don't get James's wife to drive the Bugatti that James has got. He has got the Bugatti, by the way. But so that's what I'd say. Get in touch with Steve. Get in touch with me. Go via our website. And what you can expect is a radical candor, full transparency. We are fanatical about focusing on the customer outcomes. So if we can do that and we can do it well, we'd love to work with people. If we're not the right organization, we will tell you early.
Yeah, and just to add to that, everything Matt says is completely right. With one addition, we are mentorgroup.com. So you can find us on mentor.com. We're on LinkedIn. We're on the web. All of those things are there for us. So mentorgroup.com. Or actually, you could buy our book. If you really wanted to find out beforehand, I know this is a no pitching, but Matt and I have just released a new book called Infinite Selling. You'll find it on Amazon, etc., etc. And that kind of talks a lot about what we do as an organization. You'll understand a little bit more about who Matt and I are as well, because we co-authored it together.
Perfect. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will make sure all of those links, the book and those LinkedIn URLs and website URLs, all below in the show notes today. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's nice to have a sales conversation with other people who are involved in as enthusiastic as sales as I am. So, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for your time, Matthew.
Catch you later. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.